Now, I know this is a controversial subject. Today we're dealing with big questions that really matter to a lot of people. Uh, and I know that this subject is traditionally addressed by religions, and a lot of people really deeply care about their religions. This subject touches on beliefs that really define many people's entire lives. So I understand that a lot of people are really deeply invested emotionally and in every way with this subject. Now, unfortunately, when I therefore start talking about things that might go against people's beliefs, it is common for people to get annoyed or upset or offended. Not just when I start talking about that. I think when people in the world start talking about having different beliefs, it's a common reaction to people having different beliefs, that there is upset, annoyance, there is friction, there is conflict, there is offense. I would like to make it very clear today that I really don't want to annoy anybody, to upset anybody, or to offend anybody. I will try very, very hard to be respectful about everybody's beliefs. I'm not going to be putting negativity into the words that I say. I'm only really, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to arrive at, I'm trying to give a logical analysis of reality to try and help us to think about what might be true. I know I'm not alone in having a conviction that the truth about reality is important. Many people prefer the idea of finding out actual truths about reality than merely adopting pre-existing beliefs that may or may not be true. Now, we could have a long discussion and session today on hearing everybody's different beliefs. We could do that. But what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and take the space science approach. I'm going to try and, in a logical way, look at, well, what is the evidence and what logically can we deduce from that evidence? If I do upset or offend anybody, I want to be upfront and I just want to apologize, because that's not my goal. I don't like that sort of thing when it happens. I don't like being the cause of that sort of thing when it happens. I feel that it's wise to put peace above everything else. I feel like human beings should be able to get along with each other peacefully, even when we have different beliefs. That's my conviction. And therefore, what I'm going to ask today is that we all remain civil and polite and respectful with each other, especially when or if we hear beliefs that aren't in line with our own. So I'm going to work through a presentation that I have, a lecture that I've put together that brings together all of my understanding and experiences and pieces of evidence that I have observed over the course of my entire life. I'm going to start by asking the question, is there life after death? And I'm just going to give you a straight, simple answer so that you know where I'm coming from. Yes, there is definitely life after death. Life after death is one of the easiest paranormal phenomena to prove. So I'm just saying that up front, but what is the evidence for life after death? Well, I'm going to list now some of the pieces of evidence that I have come across for life after death. First of all, let's consider near-death experiences. Let me say in advance, I'm going to do a lot of talking here. When I finish talking at the end of my lecture or presentation, I will open up the floor for any questions that people have. But near-death experiences where people have died and they've had an experience of their consciousness continuing. They've continued to experience things, whatever those things are. And then when their biological body has come back to life, then they have recalled being conscious through that period of death. Sometimes a biological body doesn't actually die. People have the experience of coming out of their bodies almost like an astral projection and looking down at their body like on an operating theatre table, or of going off into some kind of other realm. But the point is that these near-death or close to death experiences, or after death, before being brought back to life, people don't just experience a turning off and then a turning back on. They experience a continuation of consciousness, which is evidence that when people die, our consciousnesses do continue. And that's a very common phenomena. I know people personally in my family that have experienced that sort of thing. Maybe some people here have experienced that. Another piece of evidence for life after death is that many living humans frequently have what I would describe as easily verifiable psychic contact with people who have passed away, with the spirits of people who have passed away. Mediums are people who make it their profession or a very big part of their lives to communicate with these spirits. And the word medium means something that something can travel through, like the medium through which electromagnetic waves can travel through. A psychic medium or spiritual medium is somebody who can pass messages between them, from one side to the other side, between the spirit realm and the physical realm of living people. Now, mediums are people you can go to and you can ask, and they can connect you with people that have passed away. Now, I know some mediums are not real. There's a lot of people in every area of life who will try and trick you. And if you go to 10 mediums, you'll probably find a couple of those fake mediums in there. But a lot are genuine. I have a lot of medium friends who are genuine, who have genuine ability. And when you're around those people and they start telling you about the spirits that are around you and giving you information about those spirits, it's very easy to get to the stage where they've given you enough information that you know that there's no other way that they could get that. I haven't talked to mediums a lot, like I haven't asked mediums a lot for readings, but one time I did, maybe about 10 years ago, when I was trying to use a medium to connect me with my ancestors so that I could figure out one or two mysteries in my family tree. And the medium told me that my grandmother was coming through. And one thing that was relayed to me through the medium was a date, because I was asking, can you give me some kind of proof that you are my grandmother? And the date that was given to me was my mother's birthday, the birth date of my grandmother's daughter. She gave that across through the medium. And you can ask yourself, well, maybe this medium went away and did some research on me beforehand. But when you hire a medium, you don't have to give them all the information about who you are and your life history. You don't have to give them information that can identify who you are in a way that they can go away and look you up. And as it happens, I didn't give them that information. So that's very strong evidence for mediumships, for mediumship and for mediums. And I go to conventions quite a lot, paranormal conventions. I have booths, I give presentations, I'm a speaker at conventions. I have a lot of medium friends, and I've had plenty of medium friends see spirits and even other beings around me in a way that it's been able to be proved to me that they're genuine. And that's something that you can go out and try. Some of you here may even be mediums yourselves. let's see. There's also a lot of really good documentaries out there. Um, I personally really enjoy the documentary Psychic Kids. It's a little bit old now, but
I've heard of
Psychic
that.
Kids
Yeah.
with Chip Coffey.
Hmm.
I met him once. He seems like a nice guy, but he has a very cool ability, and in Psychic Kids, they go around children who are seeing spirits, who are seeing ghosts or the spirits of people that have passed away. And you could these children are not brilliant, brilliant actors. You can tell that they are sincere and genuine. And there are situations where um, the uh, the people running the show, they've come up with 5 or 10 photographs of random people, and they show them to the children, and the children look and say, yep, that's the person there who I see walking around this house somewhere as a spirit. And it turns out that that one person is the photograph of a person who died in that place. There's that sort of situation. And I personally have been convinced to my satisfaction that a lot of mediums are genuine. Um, Psychics, different people use these words differently, but a psychic is somebody who has maybe the abilities of a medium to some extent, but maybe doesn't work in that profession. Um, there are there are psychics here in this group right now. I'm looking around the screen. I'm seeing at least two who I know have psychic abilities, and um, a lot of you here may have had these experiences. When I have meetings where we reach out to any other kind of beings, including human spirits sometimes, when there's like 10 people in the meeting and 4 or 5 of the people are all psychically perceiving the same thing, that's a very good way of establishing whether or not what you're perceiving is just your imagination or whether it's real. Because if 5 or 6 people are all seeing the same thing, that is very compelling evidence that what people are seeing psychically is true and correct. That's one of the advantages of meeting in a group like this, is you can have a much higher level of proof associated with your perceptions. Um, I have been at events where I've been leading meditations, and um, I have had images come into my mind that I'm thinking, is this my imagination or is this real? I try and push the image away, but it's like, no, it's there no matter what I do, it is there. And uh, sometimes those are messages being given to me from human spirits. I had one example where I was being shown what appeared to be a piece of leather with an embossed star, 5-pointed star embossed in the leather, and this image wouldn't go away. And I was actually hosting a alien contact event outdoors, but I stopped and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm being shown an image. Does this image mean anything to anybody?" I explained to everybody in the group what I was seeing, and then one woman started to cry, and she said, "Yeah, I know exactly what that is. That's my pregnancy diary. My young child died, and I think this is a message to me uh, to tell me that my child is okay. That they're still they still exist in the spirit realm, and it's a message to me that it's okay. They exist. They may have died physically, but spiritually they're still there." I personally have also experienced my ancestors coming to me when I'm asleep. My past pets have come to me when I'm asleep, things like this. Maybe some of you have had those sorts of experiences. Now, what I'm doing is using the word evidence. These are all pieces of evidence. I'm not going to say that any one of these pieces of evidence constitutes proof, but when you look at them all together, to me personally, I've received so much strong evidence that I do think it does constitute proof. Another piece of evidence that many people have is sleep paralysis. Do you want to give me a wave if you've ever experienced sleep paralysis? Okay, it's very common. It's a very common phenomenon, and even though doctors have a medical explanation where they write it away as being something medical, there's a lot of evidence to support the idea that these are entities communicating with you. It can be human spirits that communicate with you. It can be good spirits. It can be not so good spirits. It can also be non-human entities who come to you. And this sleep paralysis is very commonly felt. And for those people that don't know what it is, when you're asleep at night, there is this feeling of a strong presence, and you feel like you're starting to wake up. You're sort of in between sleep and awakeness. You're fully aware and conscious, but sometimes you can't move, hence the word paralysis. And you can spiritually or psychically see a being often around you, sometimes on top of you, sometimes next to you. And I've had that multiple times, more times than I can remember. That's evidence of life after death. There is also physical evidence of spiritual presences, electromagnetic fluctuations when they're around. Sometimes people detect smells associated with people who have passed away. Sometimes people hear sounds around them that they are sure are coming from a spirit. Moving objects. I have a lot of activity around me. People who have been in my sessions quite a lot will have seen, will have heard big bumps going on around me, with things falling over, things falling down behind me. My lights behind me suddenly all went out at the same time one time, even though they're controlled separately with batteries inside them, and there's no correlation to them. Things like this are evidence, and indeed you can test out this sort of evidence by doing paranormal investigations. You can join a paranormal investigation team and go out and communicate with these spirits. Those are all pieces of evidence of life after death. Now, on one level, it's me just talking, and I don't expect anybody to just believe what I say. But if you go out and you investigate those things that I've talked about in more detail, I think you will build up a stronger and stronger picture in your mind that those pieces of evidence are very well established and very strong. And you can maybe establish some of those for yourself personally with personal experiences. There's also evidence of not necessarily life after death, but the existence of spirits existing within living people, which is interesting, because if spirits exist within living people, then all that needs to happen for life after death is those spirits just leave the biological body. Evidence of spirits being within living people are things like auras. Many people see auras. They look at somebody, they can see an aura around them. Many people have talked to me about my aura and seeing it, and sometimes seeing it change. And astral projection. We can, and this is verifiable absolutely 100% quite easily, you can verify that you can astrally project, take your mind to other times and places, and then remote view, see what is there. Remote viewing is so well established and accepted as being true that you can even go to the CIA website and download their own documentation on their own remote viewing studies, and even their instruction manual on how to remote view. And this is public, this is in the public domain. You can verify that quite easily, that remote viewing is a real thing. All you need to do is take your mind to a target location that you don't know. Maybe you're working with a monitor, a friend who has selected a target location, maybe with a photograph of a target location, and then try and see what's there. And then when you compare what you perceive with the target location photograph afterwards, there's very often very strong correlation. That's an experience you can have. I teach remote viewing. I give workshops on remote viewing. That's something you could participate in if you wanted to. When you astrally project your spirit to somewhere else, your conscious mind to somewhere else, not only can you just see what is there, you can communicate with beings that are sometimes there. You can communicate with spirits, you can communicate with non-human entities. That is something I do on a weekly basis. And all of these things are evidence of us having spirits, because if we didn't have a spirit, we wouldn't be able to do that. Spiritual healing is something that we can do. I lead weekly spiritual healing sessions where we take advantage of the fact that we have spirits to heal our bodies. We have a biological body, we have a spiritual body, and most of the healing we do is in our three-dimensional world is just done on our physical bodies, which is great. That can work. Not always, but it can. But that's ignoring half of who we are. We are spiritual beings also, and you can go about healing by healing the spiritual body before the physical body, and then by healing the spiritual body, the healing of the spiritual body can occur much easier and much quicker. And that's something you can prove. I have people on a regular basis contacting me after my healing sessions, showing me quite remarkable photos of before and after healing. There's also things like Kirlian photography going back a few decades, which seems to be strong evidence of being able to photograph the auras or the spiritual essences around living people. So then the question arises, where are spirits? Because if we can't all see them, and if when we die our spirit leaves us, well, where does it go to? Spirits are extra-dimensional. They exist in extra-dimensional space. What does that mean? Well, a lot of people use the word dimensions without really knowing what they're talking about, and I mean no disrespect, but I'm just going to clarify what are dimensions. A one-dimensional object is like a single straight line. It has one dimension. You can go forwards and backwards in one dimension. A two-dimensional object or realm is like an area or a surface, like a piece of paper, has two dimensions, like a graph with X and Y, two different dimensions. The second dimension is a direction. It's not a place. The second direction is a dimension. A three-dimensional object, a 3D object, has volume. It has three dimensions like X, Y, and Z, or if you're American, X, Y, and Z. The third dimension is not a place, it's a direction. So I'm trying to sort of build up an understanding of how we use this vocabulary properly or accurately. Similarly, the fourth dimension is a direction, it's not a place. The fifth dimension is a direction, it's not a place. So some people have an image in their minds of the fifth dimension being a place right over there that's separate from us. No, it's just a direction. And our spiritual bodies exist in extra-dimensional space, dimensions that are more than just three-dimensional. And those spaces are all around us. They exist here, they exist in underneath the ground, they exist in the atmosphere, these extra-dimensional spaces, they exist in oceans, they exist on the moon, they exist everywhere throughout our universe. Our universe is extra-dimensional, even though people generally only perceive the three dimensions. Now, as a scientist and as a space scientist, I know that the idea of extra-dimensional space is not just sort of some wild fantasy or sci-fi concept. It is a real scientific theory. And it's leading physicists who are trying to understand the mysteries of the universe, the known scientific mysteries of the universe, like dark energy and dark matter and the asymmetry of matter and antimatter. The people in CERN who are trying to investigate subatomic particles and extra-dimensional spaces, they all understand that the leading scientific theories on our physical reality, but leading theories by real scientists, they invoke multi-dimensional space in order to cope with coming up with a theory that explains all of the things that we don't understand. So it's not some wild sci-fi idea. The idea of extra-dimensional space is something that scientists are actually looking for. When they explode particles together in the CERN particle collider, they look very carefully at the products that come out of those explosions. They look to see whether those subatomic particles disappear into higher dimensional spaces or reappear out of higher dimensional spaces. This is a really solid theory. And as somebody that's investigated paranormal phenomena my whole life, I know that extra-dimensional spaces are real. We can prove things to be real even when they're not scientifically proved to be real. Things exist in reality that have not yet been scientifically proved, but we as individuals can prove them nevertheless. So what are spirits? What are they made out of? Well, in three-dimensional space, in our physical realms around us, we have things that are made out of matter. We're made out of matter. Everything in our rooms are made out of matter. There's also energy, but energy and matter are interchangeable. E equals mc squared. In extra-dimensional space, there is another substance. It is called corether. C-O-R ether, E-T-H-E-R, corether. And our spirits and spiritual matter, which I'm not going to call matter, is corether. It's what spirits are made out of. A lot of people just talk about energy or consciousness, but it's more complicated than that. There's more diversity. There's as much diversity in the spirit realm of substance as there is in our three-dimensional existence and realm. And this corether can have energy, spiritual energy, which permits it to move, to warm, to heal, to do work. That's what scientifically energy is defined as, the ability of something to do work. Corether is the stuff that our spirits are made out of. It could possibly be that the reason why there's a lot of missing antimatter in this universe is that it's all in extra-dimensional spaces, and it could be that our spiritual bodies are actually made out of antimatter. That's a theory. There's no real evidence to support that other than most of the antimatter in the universe is missing. So where is it? We know that there is an attractive force between spiritual corether and physical matter. We know that because our spirits stay with us. When we get up and walk around the room, our spirits stay with us. When the Earth moves around in orbit around the sun, we don't leave our spirits behind in space. It stays with us. Now, Newton's laws tell us that things keep moving in a straight line unless there is a force put upon them. That means it's a fairly obvious conclusion that we can logically deduce that there is something, a force, holding spiritual matter, corether, together with physical matter. It's an interdimensional force. We could call it an interdimensional force. And that's a very useful thing to know and understand, because when we start understanding more about the spiritual realm in terms of energy and forces, we can make more predictions and we can test those we can make more predictions and theories, and then we can test those predictions and theories. We utilize the fact that there is an interdimensional force between matter and corether when we heal spiritually. If we can use our spiritual abilities to heal our spiritual body, let's say we've got a crooked spine or neck, and we can straighten it spiritually, then the implication of there being an interdimensional force between our spiritual body and our biological body, I'm trying to twist around like this, is that there will be a force pulling on the biological body to the healing that's occurred in the spiritual body. And we utilize that when I do spiritual healing. What else has spirits? Do animals have spirits? Yes, animals have spirits. And the evidence is that it's very common for human beings to have contact with their pets that have passed away. It's very common for us to see the spirits of dead animals. Do non-human entities, aliens perhaps, have spirits? Yes, absolutely. They travel to us from all around the universe. We can travel to them, they can travel to us. We've proved that very, very strongly. There is very clearly in the alien communities, there is spiritual technology. There is extra-dimensional or coretherial technology. Some of the vessels that we see out there are clearly transdimensional. They can move between dimensions. They're not just stuck in three-dimensional space. Some of them even look more spiritual or ghost-like, cloud-like, plasma-like than physical vessels. We have orbs, UFO-like orbs above Skinwalker Ranch, for example. You see those flying around all over the place. And a lot of people see spiritual orbs. I had a retreat here about 2 weekends ago. And when we were out on the mountain back here, looking up at the sky 2 days in a row, we saw spiritual orbs. What are those UFO orbs? Well, I received a direct communication from them to me, telling me the orbs are us. They are the actual spirits themselves of those alien entities. They're not craft, they're the actual spirits moving around. And sometimes you see big physical looking type alien vessels with spiritual orbs dancing around them. It's like the aliens are flying around. It's like being on board a boat and jumping into the water and swimming around. You know, that's basically what it's like. Do plants have spirits? Well, they have spiritual substance associated with them. That doesn't necessarily mean they're conscious. They are alive. We can have evidence of that when we look at things like Kirlian photography. You can see the spiritual essence around plants. Do inanimate objects like a pen have spirits? Well, yes. Just in the same way that this is made out of physical molecules, it's also made out of coretherial molecules. It does have an extra-dimensional presence to it. So when I say, yes, this pen has a spirit, I don't mean it's like a living conscious pen spirit that has a life, is born and dies and gets reincarnated. It's like just the substance, the matter, the molecules that it's made out of. There are coretherial or spiritual components to it. Every bit of physical stuff around us has a corresponding coretherial component. So where do spirits come from? Where do our spirits come from? Well, there's a very important observation, and that's that spirits that we observe almost always match the biological bodies that they came from. So when we see the spirits of dogs, those spirits look like dogs. The spirits look like the biological dogs that the spirits came from. They don't look like people who have been reincarnated into dogs. The spirits of dogs look like dogs. When we see the spirits of babies, they look like babies. They don't look like adult spirits who were reincarnated into the babies. When you see the spirits of something that used to be alive, those spirits generally look like the biological organisms that they came from. We also see that physical imperfections that existed when a person were alive, like a limp, are often seen in their spirits after they have died. And sometimes we even feel like an injury associated with that limp. All of this evidence and a lot of other evidence that I've pulled together over the years leads to a very clear theory of where our spirits come from. Not all of them, but most of them. The evidence is that spirits grow with the biological bodies. So if you imagine any living organism, when it's in its earliest embryonic stages, molecules coming together, forming new cells and cells multiplying, with that, with every molecule, you're getting a choreotherial component coming in. You're getting an identical spirit forming around the biological component in a way that the spirit matches intricately the biologically forming organism. And that then helps to explain all of the evidence, like spirits looking like the biological bodies that they came from. It also helps to explain how we can heal, because the spiritual body almost exactly matches the biological body. So all you need to do is manipulate that spiritual body to look biologically correct, to be biologically correct, and you do get spiritual healing, which then promotes biological healing. And when you bake a cake, you're throwing molecules together. They all have spiritual components. The flour, the sugar, they all have spiritual components. When you bake a cake, you do end up with a cake spirit. It's not a conscious living thing, but if you were to be able to take a step out of three-dimensional space and look at the aura around that cake, you would see it does have an aura. It does have spiritual molecules associated with it. So this is true of non-living and living things, including water and minerals and everything physical in our universe. So then we have a big question: what is consciousness? Because life after death requires a continuation of consciousness. Consciousness or sentience is being aware of oneself and aware of one's environment. This goes merely beyond sensing and reacting to sensory inputs. This is an awareness. Consciousness requires a sufficient complexity and structure. Consciousness requires the right kind of complexity and structure. You can't just have a conscious entity or a consciousness existing in free-floating space. That's like trying to build a computer out of nothing, a processing thing that stores memory out of no structure. You just can't do it. You have to have structure to house the memory, to house the abilities, the skills, the characteristics of an individual. Now we know as a scientific fact that our consciousness is housed in our brain. When people receive injuries to all around their bodies, it might hurt, but it doesn't affect who you are as an individual. It doesn't affect your consciousness. But when you start messing with the brain, when you have an injury to the brain, then you start messing with the consciousness. And you go away and study that subject in a scientific way, you will see that clearly the brain, injuries to the brain, or lobotomies, or messing around in surgeries with the brain, results in a change of the consciousness of a person. Because there is because the brain builds up as it grows and develops, because it builds up a choreotherial or spiritual brain around it, you build an identical structure, almost identical structure of your brain in the spirit realm. You build up a spiritual brain. That is where the complexity and structure lies for our consciousness to continue. Reality is not magic, it's not fantasy, it's based on reality. You need a complex structure to house your consciousness, whether you're in the physical realm or the spiritual realm. And when you die, your spirit is released from your physical body to come away into the spiritual realm, and your consciousness remains. Who you are stays the same. Your character, your personality, your knowledge, your memories stay the same in your spiritual brains. So when you put all of the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together, this all makes perfect sense. Where do we go after we die? Well, when people have near-death experiences, when they die and come back, or when they get close to death and they come back, often they see a tunnel. Often they see like a light that they walk towards. Um, I have a theory. I call this the transition tunnel. I have a theory that what's happening is we're making a transition as we go from three-dimensional space to extra-dimensional space, where we are now receiving very clear extrasensory input, extra-dimensional input. How does our brain cope with that? How does it process it? Well, it sort of pushes the three-dimensional perceptions in towards the middle, and the higher dimensional perceptions come in around the outside, and you end up with this tunnel-like effect. That's a theory. I don't know that to be true, but it kind of makes sense to me. People are usually, when they die, met by family or friends. They feel a sense of love. There is a psychic or empathic connection, psychic, empathic, telepathic connection, and we have clear proof that spiritually we have telepathic and empathic abilities. Um, and we feel that love, and those family and friends know that you're going to die. They're there when you die, because when you're massless, which spirits are, you have trans-temporal perceptions. You're not limited by the speed of light. You can travel faster than the speed of light. You can astrally project, therefore, into other times, and they know that you're going to be passing away. They're there for you. They greet you, and they take you off to their locations where they live. There is a very terrestrial type societal structure and familial structure in the spirit realm. There is not like one. I know that these assertions may not fit in line with everybody's opinions, but it's not like half of you go off to heaven and half of you go off to hell. There's no evidence for that is the slightest bit compelling to me. We are greeted into whichever culture we live in our lives. If we're Muslim, we're greeted by Muslim spirits. If we're Christian, we're greeted by Christian spirits. It's that sort of a situation. And there seems to be a lot of evidence for that. Spirits of deceased people, both humans and animals, often do linger close to their loved ones, and there is clearly the ability for spirits not to be just sort of locked away in one place. They can move back to their loved ones and interact with them after they've died. All cultures, all religions, all around the world report similar spiritual encounters with deceased members of the communities. There's no one right religious viewpoint or spiritual viewpoint. Spirits, ghosts are in every part of the world, and that's what the spirit realm is like. So let's see. Then what happens? As we move towards the end of this session, I will just quickly answer that question. What happens next? Well, you enter into life with your family or your friends in the spirit realm, and you undergo an education about how to function in the spirit realm. It's very similar to being born in this world. You have to go through an education, a learning, and it's not just a learning of knowledge, it's a spiritually learning how to deal with your extra-dimensional spiritual perceptions. In the spirit realms, you have differences. In the spiritual realm, you have different societies. You have different clusters of spirits in different places with different laws and different rules. It's actually very similar to what we've got here. One key difference is that societies change and evolve very quickly in our modern lives because people's lives are not very long. And so the new generation is coming up behind the old generation. The old generation dies and new ways and new ideas come in. In the spiritual realm, most people who are in the spirit realm are very old. They've been there for a long time. Societies are well established and structured, and the new people coming in are only a very, very small, thin layer of new people coming into a very old and structured society. Those are all of my logical interpretations about what happens after we die. Does anybody here have any quick questions? I know I've talked for almost the entire hour, but go ahead.
Hi. So the last thing you were saying is about how most in the spiritual realm have well-structured and old societies. Can you explain that a little more?
Spirits live after they've left their biological bodies. Spirits live for a longer period of time than we live biologically, physically. We're only here for a brief period of time. Our spiritual lives will continue for much longer. And I'll be honest, I don't know exactly how long, but at least hundreds of years in the spirit realm. And therefore, um, spirits, the turnaround of spirits in the spirit realm is far slower. You have most of the spirits that are there have been there for hundreds of years, and so the spirits that are the humans that are dying on the earth right now who go to the spirit realm, they will constitute only a very small population of the spirits in the spirit realm. It could be that spirits live for thousands of years or even millions of years. I don't know the answer to that. But on this planet, in the physical realm, all you need to do is wait 120 years, and you have no people remaining who were alive 120 years ago. You have completely new population. You don't get that quick turnaround in the spirit realm. You have to wait thousands or possibly millions of years before all of the spirits have moved on to somewhere else, evolved into other things, or even died, which is a possibility for spirits in the spirit realm. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Another question.
I'm curious about how the concept of reincarnation. Do the spirits have a chance to come back to this physical realm at some other juncture?
That is an extremely good question, which I'm sure a lot of people here want to know the answer to. It would take about half an hour probably for me to give a full
Okay.
explanation. What I will say in a nutshell, and I'm not going to be able to offer any evidence for this,
Yeah.
but natural reincarnation is not a thing. Reincarnation doesn't happen naturally. When you die, then you stay in the spirit realm.
Hmm. Okay.
But can people choose when they're in the spirit realm to somehow insert part of their consciousness into a newly developing baby? Then yes, there are mechanisms in place whereby that can happen in some way. With alien level tech, genetic engineering, they can engineer host bodies, host biological bodies for an entire spirit to be reincarnated into.
Interesting. Okay.
So what I'm going to say is natural reincarnation isn't a thing, but um, artificial reincarnation
Hmm. Hmm.
does happen, um, both through technological means in a more whole way, but also through surgical means in a small way.
Okay.
Um, but it's a big subject, and also the main piece of evidence for reincarnation is that some people, a small fraction of the population of people on this planet, have memories of past lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is evidence for reincarnation, but it's not proof of reincarnation.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it could also be that people are connecting spiritually, like in an astral projection, remote viewing way, with the consciousnesses of people in the past.
Okay. That makes
So
sense.
there's
Yeah.
several explanations for reincarnation.
Okay.
Um, but I'm going to host another event, maybe in a week, about life before life, and I will address that more fully.
Okay. Fair enough.
Thank you very much. Um, I am so sorry that I'm not going to have a chance to hear everybody's questions, but I hope you've got something out of this. If you're not yet a member of my Facebook group, Alien Contact, I recommend that you join. If you would like to join us for the next hour and a half, maybe in what is essentially a communication with human spirits, that is taking place in my Patreon group, patreon.com/alien contact. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. You all enjoy the rest of your day. You all take care. Goodbye for now.
Thanks, Robert.
You're very welcome.